Hi, my name is Andrew Feinstein. I'm so sorry that I can't be with you in person today. By way of background, I'm South African. I'm Jewish. My mother was a Holocaust survivor who survived the Holocaust in occupied Vienna itself. She was hidden in a coal cellar for 3.5 years. And whenever there was a raid on the area in which she lived, she was rolled up into a carpet that was put up against the wall and hidden behind coal. Many members of her extended family were not as lucky, with dozens of them dying, particularly at the Auschwitz death camp. I've lectured at Auschwitz and written for the Auschwitz Institute on genocide prevention. In addition, as an ANC Member of Parliament under Nelson Mandela in South Africa, I introduced the first motion in the entire history of the South African Parliament on the Holocaust. It's not surprising that it had never been discussed in South Africa, because those who ran the country after the Second World War were unreconstructed Nazis. My mother, when she moved to South Africa with my South African father, arrived in the country and saw that the majority of people, the black South Africans as they were called by the apartheid state, who constituted 83% of the population, were disenfranchised, were treated as subhuman effectively. And she saw in what was happening in apartheid South Africa exactly what had been experienced by European Jews under the Nazis. And she understood the notion of never again as applying not just to Jews, but to all humanity. And it's for that reason that she got involved in the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa through an organization called the Black Sash. And I too got involved in that struggle from a very young age. It's important to note that in South Africa's liberation struggle, which was led by the ANC, the PAC, ZAPO, and many other organizations, we had a very close affinity with the Palestinian struggle for liberation. And the reasons for that were fairly clear. First of all, both in apartheid Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, the oppressed people have experienced a settler colonial regime that is based on racist white supremacy. So there was that immediate connection between our struggles. But secondly, we saw our struggles as fraternal. The African National Congress, my own political organization for many years, and the Palestine Liberation Organization in the days of Yasser Arafat had a very close alliance. In fact, when South Africa became a democracy in 1994, Yasser Arafat was one of the first foreign leaders to address our new democratic parliament. I think these are some of the reasons why South Africa brought its submission to the International Court of Justice against Israel, arguing in the highest court in the world, a court that adjudicates on just one issue, the crime of genocide, what is sometimes referred to as the crime of crimes. South Africa, as a country that overcame a racist oligarchy successfully, feels a moral responsibility to stand up against racism, against oligarchy, against oppression, wherever it finds it. And the fact that we have this long time historic relationship with the Palestinian people only made that more urgent. The Palestinian struggle is very much a part of political life in South Africa today, many years after we became a democracy ourselves. People rejoiced in the country at South Africa bringing this submission to the ICJ. And of course, as you know, the court found that there is a great likelihood that genocide is being committed in Gaza by Israel. Now, for those of us who watch this tragedy unfold every single day on our screens. We don't require a court to tell us that this is genocide. It is patently obvious to us. And we demand not just an immediate ceasefire. We demand that all arms sales from Germany, from the United Kingdom, from the United States, from France, from Spain, from Italy, and all other weapons-producing countries to the State of Israel stop immediately. And the reason this is so important now is because we are seeing the Israeli state, an apartheid state, as both my former boss Nelson Mandela stated, and as my former friend and political mentor Archbishop Desmond Tutu stated, Israel is in fact a worse apartheid state than was experienced by the majority of South Africans. Because in the South African context, the racist state required the incredibly cheap labor of the black workforce to keep the economy going, whereas Israel does not have that imperative with the Palestinian people, as a consequence of which they are willing to massacre, quite literally, hundreds of Palestinians, including many women and children, every day. In fact, for them, the economic consequences of that are positive, because the Israeli economy is so dependent on conflict, on war, on what is described as homeland security. Industries in which Israel acts effectively as a shop window for the world's biggest defense and homeland security countries. Because our own governments in the so-called Western world have completely failed the people of Palestine, have completely failed their own citizens, the vast majority of whom want a ceasefire, it is essential that we, the people, make clear to our elected representatives who are supposed to be accountable to us, whose salaries we pay at the end of the day, that what they are doing by supporting Israel, by effectively being complicit in a genocide, by arming and facilitating that genocide, a weapons trade, by the way, from which our political parties in Germany, the UK, the US, France, etc., make huge amounts of money from this most corrupt of all trades, and a trade from which individual politicians benefit. I would strongly encourage you to read my book, The Shadow World, which details how Helmut Kohl not only funded his own political party from the proceeds of corrupt arms deals, but also funded himself personally. Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, has made well over £100 million personally since leaving office from his decision to invade Iraq and his association with British and American arms companies. So we are not only facilitating this genocide, our politicians are profiteering from it. We need to demand the ceasefire, the halt to arms sales, but in addition to that, we have to insist that all of those who have perpetrated this genocide, who are complicit in this genocide, face justice. Because if they don't, any form of international rule of law is dead, and Israel will have impunity to do what it wants, where it wants. Let me finally say that the attempts by the State of Israel, which are very conscious attempts, to label those of us who are opposed to their genocidal actions, who are opposed to their apartheid regime, to label us as anti-Semites, is not only disingenuous, it is a repulsive abuse of the suffering of millions and millions of Jews over thousands of years. And I personally oppose it wherever I can. Our struggle, which is an anti-imperialist struggle, is also an anti-racist struggle. But we only hear talk of anti-Semitism, and of course anti-Semitism is unacceptable, just as Islamophobia, anti-black racism, and any form of discrimination is unacceptable in our struggle. So let us come together globally, as we have done for 6 months, and let us demand that our governments, our politicians, stop their support for this ongoing, indefensible genocide. And let's do so both in the memory of those tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians who have been slaughtered by Israel, and those who are struggling to survive every single day. And let us also do it in the memory of my former boss, Nelson Mandela, who on his release from 27 years in an apartheid prison emerged into freedom to announce that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. Thank you.